Back against restrictive voter ID laws. A new report from the DNC outlines 40 different states across the country where Republican lawmakers have passed or proposed restrictions on voting. I'm joined now by Florida Congresswoman and Chair of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Congresswoman, nice to see you this morning.
You too, Thomas. Thanks so much.
Absolutely great to have you here. So tell us more about the campaign, and the site is called protectingthevote.org. What exactly are you and the DNC protecting the vote from?
Well, we're protecting the vote from Republicans across the country in 40 states now who have passed horrendous voter suppression laws that specifically target groups of voters that are more likely to go to the polls and vote for Democrats. Things like requiring photo IDs when no ID was required before. In my state, for example, shrinking, and other states as well, shrinking the length of time for early voting because you have a higher percentage of African Americans and Hispanic voters that cast their ballots early. Or, again, in my state, telling organizations that register voters that they have to turn in the voter registration applications within 48 hours or face up to a $1,000 fine per voter. And they've now gone after teachers who are registering their students to vote under that new law. It's just absolutely unbelievable. We put up this website, protectingthevote.org, so that we could make sure that voters across the country have comprehensive information in their own state on how to get access to the polls and make sure that they don't have that access blocked. And then we also issued a report today to detail the voter suppression efforts that have been pushed forward by Republicans and get access to the polls and the information for voters so that we can make sure we can get everyone to the polls.
Congresswoman, those on the right would say that the reason why they are in favor of the voter ID laws is simply about voter fraud. How do you respond to that?
Well, as a former member of the Judiciary Committee, both during the Bush administration and under President Obama, there was a 5-year investigation by the Bush Justice Department to look into whether there is widespread voter fraud across the country. And they spent 5 years looking for it and came up with almost none. It's very clear that they have an insidious effort at targeting groups of voters who are more likely as students, the elderly, African Americans, Hispanics, low-income voters. Those, for example, Thomas, about 11% of Americans don't have a photo ID.
Right.
About 25% of African Americans don't have a photo ID. And then there's the different kinds of photo IDs that are allowed to be used as proof of who they are. So student IDs, students more likely to vote for President Obama in 2008. Student IDs in Texas, even issued by a state university, aren't an acceptable form of photo ID. But if you have a gun permit issued by the state of Texas, then it is. So it's just so obvious and transparent, but not obvious to the average voter who expects that they would have easy access to the poll. This is America, after all, and we should be trying to expand access to voting.
Yeah.
Encourage voting, exactly. That's what the Democratic Party has stood for 50 years. Republicans clearly want to shrink who is going to the polls because they know they can't win elections on the merits, so they're trying to rig the election through blocking people's access to the polls.
Congresswoman,
really,
I want to switch topics, though, and get you on 2012 quickly to talk about Governor Chris Christie saying the Democrats are afraid of Mitt Romney. He said, quote, let's let the president and his henchmen keep doing it. That shows he's the person they're most afraid of, and that's good news for us from a political perspective. Is the president making a mistake by focusing on Mitt Romney too early in this race?
We're focusing on Mitt Romney because American voters should be afraid of the prospect of Mitt Romney becoming president of the United States. They need to understand that this is a person who has no moral core, no conviction, willing to change his position based on the political winds and the way they blow on the most major issues, on whether he supports, he's been on both sides of Roe versus Wade and a woman's right to choose, both sides on whether we should bring troops from Afghanistan home or leave them there, no plan for the war in Iraq. Both sides of so many different issues. You may not agree with whoever is the occupant of the White House, but Americans do want to make sure that they know where they stand. And you never know where Mitt Romney stands. Mitt Romney probably has trouble keeping track of where he stands on any given day, and we think that's important information for voters to have so that they know what they're getting when they cast a ballot for their candidate for President of the United States.
Florida Congresswoman and Chair of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Congresswoman, nice to see you this morning. Thank you.
You too. Thanks, Thomas.
Developing news now that we need to tell you about coming to us out of Orlando, Florida.